Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Debbie. I'm with Allegiance Home Health. Allegiance Home Health is we welcome you to the first of our speaker series, and we are very happy that you're here to participate. So a few housekeeping items I want to go over first is this is going to be, Scott's doing an interactive presentation, so there's going to be opportunities for people to participate. So when you participate, we are asking that everyone raise your hand. There is a way to raise your hand on this. If you're on the telephone, I am not sure how. But I do know on the screen, if you're on the live screen or you're just muted on the computer, if you go into the participants in the bottom right-hand corner, on the bottom screen, on the bottom of your screen, it says participants. If you click that, there's 3 little dots in the bottom right-hand corner. And when you click those, it allows you to raise your hand and put your hand down. And then Scott will call on you. And at that point, you can unmute yourself and then speak. And then we're asking everyone to keep your microphones muted throughout, just to limit the amount of disruptions during the process. So if anyone has any questions, just go ahead and you can pop them up on the chat. We're also recording the presentation as well, so that you're aware, and bloopers are allowed. So don't worry, we're all gonna make some along the way, I am sure. So that said, I'd like to introduce you to Scott Cochrane of Call My Mom and Bold Mind X. Scott is a performance coach, international speaker, and published author. He has spent nearly 3 decades coaching people on ways to have a healthier, happier life by focusing on achieving balance with their physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual selves. We are extremely lucky to have him here today to do the presentation, Loneliness in Seniors and How It Impacts Health and What to Do About It. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna switch over the host abilities to Scott, and then we're gonna get started. To mute myself.
Okay, I think I'm off mute now. Good morning or good afternoon. I don't know. You know, it's I'm actually in Boulder, Colorado, and it's 10:30 in the morning. So I may say good morning more than once through this. So bear with me on that. I actually, you know, Debbie, you said I've been doing this for 3 decades. It's only been 29 years. So I'm almost there, and more than 20 years of that were in Spain, and in Barcelona, Spain. You know, we have lunch at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's morning until you eat lunch. So if you haven't had lunch yet, then you can still say good morning as well. So you know, we're in kind of interesting times, and I was thinking about this. I have been doing this for 29 years, and I work with executives of different corporations around the world, and that goes all the way around the world now, including New Asian and Malaysia and Japan and Europe and here and the West Coast and Vancouver and places like that. So it's a pretty broad group of people. And you know, we started working on this project around loneliness and what it was all about, how it's affecting seniors, maybe about 3 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And at that time, there was not a direct correlation with the other work that I was doing, except some coaching things, which I'll get into here soon in the conversation. And now everything's kind of gone belly up. You know, everything's totally different. We're all in isolation, so it's you know, whether I'm talking to you here, everybody's sitting in their home. Most of you are sitting in your home spaces, offices, or maybe even kitchen tables of some people, you know, and that's what I'm finding all over the world. So now there's this really direct correlation, and strange things are happening. You know, first we're all starting to, all the men. We're all starting to break the first cardinal rule, which is don't cut your own hair. Now, you know, we get the clippers. My clippers just came in from Amazon. Took 2 weeks to get clippers from Amazon. I mean, really, clipper businesses are booming and home exercise equipment. So we're starting to do kind of crazy things, and these exceptional circumstances are driving home even more of the importance of what we're here to talk about today, which is around loneliness. And if it's funny, but if you think back to your childhood, or if you have children, young children, when they misbehave, what do? We send them to their room. We put them in isolation, or we ground them, and they can't see their friends. We're kind of in this movie marathon. I don't know, anybody like watching a lot of movies these days? Or the family movie night, and you have to fight about what you're going to watch and what's there. My wife and I, we when we can't find anything new that's interesting, we go to the old movies, and I just keep remembering this old movie, Cool Hand Luke. Anybody remember Cool Hand Luke? No? Okay, Cool Hand Luke it's a very young not Robert Redford, Paul Newman, who's in prison, and he's constantly trying to escape prison. And he gets caught every time. And what do you do with the prisoner's bag? You put him in solitary confinement. So, I mean, we're talking about, we got the whole world in this situation where we're kind of in the same circumstances, the same environment that we use to punish our children and our prisoners. We're all kind of in solitary confinement. And sometimes it's different for different people, but some people were in solitary confinement with our families and with our kids. And then I talked to some people that are actually in like these 200 square foot apartments all by themselves in total lockdown environments, like in Japan and these different places that are different circumstances. And they're alone, locked in their apartments. And then I have travelers that are out there, and they'll arrive to a different city, and they'll be put into a hotel room in quarantine with military guards outside in the hallways, and they have to stay inside for 2 weeks and have food like slipped through the door to them, and that's the only contact that they have. So we're living this whole thing of loneliness on a broader scale now, and it's pretty interesting. It really drives home what's going on with our seniors, and as we'll discuss moving forward here, this whole social isolation, the social distancing kind of environment has an even bigger effect on our loved ones who are aging. We're accustomed to being able to go and visit our parents, our grandparents, and so many times now that's less possible, depending on where they live and who we are and what's permitted to be able to take place. So it's interesting how this is all changing. In my work with them, it's interesting because the first thing I try to help them do when I'm talking to these executives, and they're isolated in one circumstance or another, is around the difference between social distancing and physical distancing. Because I think realistically, when we're talking about social distancing, it's a misnomer. We don't want social distancing. What we want is physical distancing. We want social closeness. And we have to learn new ways to do that. And so I want to thank Debbie for the permission to have bloopers, because, we're not always so accustomed to having meetings like this, where we're all in different parts of the country, actually. And we're coming together as one here. But we're going to make mistakes. We're going to have to figure out how the video works, and we're going to have to put up with some drops in coverage sometime and some strange things, and we can kind of wave, but it's not the same as being close, as actually being in a circle talking to each other. So we have to kind of get over that and accept that it's just a physical distancing thing. And the other thing that's there that I try to coach them towards is around the importance of the stories that we tell ourselves. And I'll give you a little information around that. You can probably recognize that we spend a fair amount of our time actually kind of telling ourselves stories in our own head about what's going on in the world. And it for some people, it just never stops. We have this constant dialogue. We're always talking to ourselves. We're always telling ourselves a story. And what that basically turns into is it points to the difference between fact and truth. And fact and truth are simply not the same thing. The facts are the hard facts of what's really happening, what the words that have been said, the fact of being in some kind of social limiting circumstance, some sort of stay at home or lockdown. Those are facts. The truth about anything is basically the stories that we tell ourselves about those facts. It's the meaning that we place on it. So I can have the same set of facts, and I can have 10 different people. I can see 9 or 10 of you on the screen now. The same set of facts can have 10 different meanings, 10 different truths. So, these truths, we decide on these truths either consciously or subconsciously. And, I don't know, when left alone to our own devices, if we don't have news, we don't know what's going on, we're living in uncertainty. I don't know about your mind, but my mind and a lot of minds is pretty capable of coming up with some pretty horrific stories. It's like we've seen too many scary movies or something, and we start creating these constructs of what's really going on out there that are much worse than reality in many times. So we have to be a little bit careful about those. The reason we have to be careful is related to where those stories go, because the truth that we place on things, the meanings that we place on things, determines the emotion that we feel, right? That's always a determining factor. So if I have any set of circumstances and the meaning that I place on it is negative, what's going to happen to my emotions? I'm going to start feeling some anxiety. I'm going to start feeling maybe a little worried. I may be truly concerned about something. I may be a little angry that I can't go visit my loved ones, or that my children aren't coming to visit me anymore. I may be actually just kind of sad and moving towards even a depressive sort of state of just being alone too long. So that's all based on the meanings that we have. Those meanings that we place on things, or those emotions that we feel, drive our behavior. So there's this clear chain that goes from fact of what's going on, the meaning that we place on it, the emotion that we feel, which drives our behavior. So if I'm feeling anxious, if I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling concerned, I'm feeling isolated, my actions, my behaviors are going to reflect that. They're going to be a little bit more lethargic. I'm going to be less probably likely to be reaching out and doing more things. I'm going to have less energy. And those actions that I take, those behaviors, drive my outcomes. So if I'm actually acting a little lethargic, if I'm not as connected as I could be, if I'm not actually energetic and doing things, my outcomes are going to be pretty negative. And I'm going to be able to look back and say, see, I told you so. I was right. My meaning was correct. And all you've done is live a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, the answer to this, if you take a look at it, suppose I were to attach a different meaning to that same set of truths. And as a result, my emotional state changes. So suppose I find something that's not quite so negative to attach to, my emotional state changes, my behaviors change, and I'll have a different set of outcomes and that same result of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's a process that repeats itself all through our lives. So we have to be really careful about what's our internal dialogue. What are we telling ourselves? What are we creating in our own heads? And challenge ourselves with that, because most of the time we just kind of subconsciously accept the story that comes to mind about it, or because we read something in the newspaper, which, it's not that easy to find good news in the newspaper. They like to make things bigger than life and sell kind of the bad and scary stuff. So it's pretty easy to come up with some negative meanings around things. So we have to be conscious, challenge ourselves about what meanings could really be more powerful, not be afraid to attach to some meanings that may seem difficult to believe. Because you know what? Let's be clear. If I can have one set of facts and 10 different meanings, 10 different truths. Does truth really exist? I mean, what is the truth? It's nothing more than a construct on our head. So be willing to challenge yourself and even sometimes naively choose the meaning that makes you feel better, and your actions will be better and your outcomes will change, and you'll be able to live that self-fulfilling prophecy as well. That's where I coach executives and people and my children and whoever I can talk to. Now, where does that apply to others? Basically, we can take care of ourselves like that.
Scott, I don't want to interrupt, but some people want to get in the meeting and I can't let them in. I'm sorry. Can you go to participants and just let
Take the
them
host
in?
back. Do I have to give you the host, or can you become the host by yourself?
I can't do it by myself.
Okay. Let me see if I know how.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's all right. I'm sorry if I don't know how to do it.
Just click my face, and then in the top corners you can switch me. I think I can switch myself. Wait, let's see.
Yeah, I hope so. I can switch my view, but I don't know how to switch out of being the host.
You just click me and you make me the host.
Yeah?
Or you can just go to participants and let the people in.
Let's do that.
Admit.
Okay. Yeah, we got Bonnie, Elba. Admit all. Here we are.
And then you.
Okay. I think I did it. Wow. Our first blooper. Good.
Yes.
So this becomes important in ourselves, but it also becomes important in other people. Because, you know, if we're working with our loved ones, with our senior loved ones, with our parents, with our grandparents, they're going to have this same thing going on. So they're going to be hearing a lot of bad news from the television they're watching. They're going to be dealing with all sorts of different things and telling themselves stories. So the more we can find a way to help coach them and help them tell themselves more encouraging stories, the better they're going to have, the better emotional state they're going to have, the more likely they are to take some actions that actually build their social presence and how they're doing, and feel better. So it goes beyond just ourselves, and that's not always an easy thing to do. So we're going to talk a little bit about how that happens. What I want to do with you now is the following. We've been doing a lot of work around this for the last several years, and one of the things we've done is explore what loneliness really means. How can you measure loneliness in somebody? I mean, it's more than just a question, are you lonely? It's not a yes or no kind of thing. There are different scales of lonely. We differentiate loneliness between social loneliness and emotional loneliness, and they're kind of different. Social loneliness occurs when someone's missing a wider social network, so we might be seeing a lot of that. Emotional loneliness is kind of caused when you're missing that intimate relationship that is going on there. So we take a look at those, and we did some research, and we came across a survey that's put together by a couple of researchers, De Jong and Deerfield. I have no idea where they are, but they put this together back in 2006 as related to loneliness and aging. And one of their objectives was to make it telling and also make it simple, make it something that's not 37 questions and an interview. It's actually a 6-question survey that gives an idea, kind of a judgment call about what level of loneliness am I feeling. So I'd like to guide you through this. And then what I want you to do is grab a piece of paper, just a scrap paper, and you're going to keep score for yourself. Very simple score keeping process here. I'll guide you through it as we go. So the first question is, well, there are statements. I experience a general sense of emptiness. You can answer these in 3 ways. And this is for all the questions. You can answer yes, you can answer more or less, or you can answer no. Statement again is, I experience a general sense of emptiness. So please choose one of those 3, yes, more or less, or no, for yourself. If you chose yes, give yourself 1 point. If you chose more or less, give yourself 1 point. If you chose no, give yourself 0. The next statement is, I miss having people around me. I miss having people around me. Same selection process, yes, more or less, or no. If you scored yourself a yes, give yourself 1 point. If you scored yourself a more or less, give yourself 1 point. If you scored yourself a no, give yourself 0 points. Next statement. I often feel rejected. I often feel rejected. Selections, yes, more or less, or no. Same grading. If you gave yourself a yes, 1 point. If you gave yourself more or less, 1 point. If you gave yourself a no, 0 points. Next question. There are plenty of people I can rely on when I have problems. There are plenty of people I can rely on when I have problems. Yes, more or less, or no. If you scored yourself a yes, please, that's 0 points. If you scored more or less, it's 1 point. If you scored a no, it's 1 point. Number 5, there are many people I can trust completely. There are many people I can trust completely. Possible answers, yes, more or less, or no. Scoring, yes is 0, more or less is 1, no is 1. Final statement, there are enough people I feel close to. There are enough people I feel close to. Possible answers, yes, more or less, or no. Yes scores a 0, more or less scores a 1, no scores a 1. So what I'd like you to do is add up your scores and take a look at what number came out. The range of scores will be 0 to 6, of course. And 0 is the least lonely. That's a score of not being lonely, basically. 6 demonstrates a high level of loneliness. So it's kind of interesting. I think I went through this myself, and I think 2 months ago, my score would have been different. Now, as I went through this, I actually scored a 3. I'm in the middle of the scale. So I'd love to hear from anybody out there about that, what you scored on yours, and what do you think about that? So floor is open. If you raise your hand, push that button, or raise your physical hand. Maybe push the button, because I don't know if I can see everybody that's on this call. Floor is open. I'd love to hear from somebody that's willing to share what you just learned about yourself, maybe where you scored, and what do you think about that? Anybody willing to share? Emily, please turn off your mute, Emily, and tell us a little bit about your experience.
Oh, well, yes, for sure. I feel that if this was a few weeks ago, a few months ago, the scores would be different. But for now, maybe I feel like my circle is a little bit tighter. The people trust are people who I haven't trusted before. Now I trust in more because I rely on them more to give me that sense of closeness and not being so lonely.
Yeah.
And then there are people who I think of who don't have that, and how fortunate I am because I have that circle and my coworkers who I talk to daily now. Before, when it was we would talk weekly. Now we are more close, relying on each other.
Yeah, that's important. It's interesting effect, isn't it? We're almost working more now than before in your circumstances. Yeah. So, Susan, I see your physical hand going up there. Please talk to us.
Hi, everybody. I hate to be this person, but I'm perfectly fine. Thank you very much.
We're glad.
And I love the test. I'm one of those people who take tests all the time just for the fun of it. So there's nothing worse than being a nerd. One of the interesting parts that you're talking about and loneliness, I find that what Emily said is perfect. When crisis happens, it's ourselves and our own reflection of ourselves that follows through on this. And in the work I've been doing lately, what I am finding is the seniors are much better at coping than the millennials are doing. And the loneliness and the isolation has been reversed, and I find the elderly are comforting us because they remember when, or when your grandfather was in the war and we had to wait. I mean, the stories, and anyone in our market are hearing these war stories are coming out, and we know we didn't need to have those things to be able to communicate. And what is even more precious that I'm finding is that people are more of a sense of normal in relating to others, because we all have commonness no matter where we are. So
Yeah.
for once, no one can really complain because we're at the exact same place with the same things going on.
Yeah. No, well said. Well said. You know, and it's important to recognize we all do live different experiences. A beautiful observation of older people. They do have more experiences through life, so they have a built-up learning about things, and each of those are different as well, of course. So yeah, thank you, Susan. Anybody else to share? Room for one more person? Yamal, I think I saw your hand go up there. Yeah, please. You have to unmute yourself. I'm not so technical. I could do it for you, but.
All right. Hi, everyone. I score it too. I mean, I probably, like Emily, I just feel that we have become possibly more close with coworkers on a daily basis, and, you know, neighbors. I definitely miss, other people, and obviously in our career, we are all the time in the field. We're visiting patients, medical offices, hospitals. So definitely I miss that interaction. But with all this, I have seen that families have become closer. Friends, tend to check on each other more often. So like I was commenting to other people, something positive that probably will come out of this is people have rediscover how relationships or that closeness, how can influence us in a positive way. So I'm doing okay. I'm fortunate to, but I definitely miss my my coworkers in the field, our patients, our customers. It's a transition, but hopefully we'll get there together.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing, Yamal. You put something really interesting on the table, which is near and dear to my heart, which is life as a learning experience. And it's really easy to live these moments as being kind of dark and grim sometimes. But you know what? Everything in life is balanced, and there's always a positive side to things as well. So being conscious and learning along the way is important. Coming back to seniors, it does have an effect on them. I agree with Suzanne's comment that it does kind of put us on an even playing field, and that's kind of interesting. I like that. All the same, there have been some studies done around seniors prior to this particular crisis and situation. And, you know, there's some statistics around it. I'll share a couple of them with you. But there's a Cigna did a study a few years ago, and they found that seniors, 47% of the people they surveyed often feel alone, left out, or lacking any type of meaningful connection. AARP, which is very active with these groups of people and studies and information, of course, they found that this is a study from 2010, actually, so it's 10 years old already. But they found that in 2010, 35% of people over 45 reported being chronically lonely, compared to 20% that reported being chronically lonely back in 1980. So a 30-year difference, but we're becoming more lonely. That's kind of an interesting one in the sense that I was like, that's why, you know? But we've built a different lifestyle for ourselves, kind of, you know? If I go back, just to reveal a little bit more about how long I've been around, I guess, but, you know, I started doing business back in 1980. So I coincide with that year. And when we wanted to communicate, we actually, you know, picked up the phone and talked to people, or, you know, we sent letters, which is very different, writing a letter than jotting off a text message or an email that we don't even use full words or full sentences anymore, you know. And then you interpret what that tries to mean. Or we went to meet and we had more face-to-face contact, and things weren't quite so fast moving. So I think that has more to do with it. It's difficult in an electronic world to share care and empathy. It's more difficult to do that on an electronic level than it is being face-to-face or even voice-to-voice. Because, you know, you can write, and I don't know if you've ever played this game before or got caught in the trap. You can have the same sentence and read it with different tonality on different words, and it takes a whole different meaning. It can go from being friendly to being aggressive, just from changing the tonality on various words in that sentence. So when we send a message, it's up to the reader to decide, what does that message mean? And it's really easy to mistake what it means, to take the wrong tone. It's like trying to solve a conflict with email. I mean, forget it. You're only going to dig yourself deeper into a hole. It's totally impossible. You have to talk. So I think that probably has something to do with it, that we progressed greatly in our ability to communicate quickly, use technology in that same 30-year period. And wow, lo and behold, you know, the levels of people reporting chronic loneliness has increased quite dramatically, almost doubling. So that's kind of an important piece. There's some physical things that happen around ourselves as we do that. Studies have shown that certain hormones, you know, including cortisol, is increased, is released when we're feeling stress. Loneliness can cause some stress. So it increases blood sugar, decreases immune systems, not too great right now, increases inflammation, increases risk of cardiovascular disease and cancers. Cancer treatment doesn't work so well because it just kills that ability to actually accept the treatment itself. On a broad scale, when we take that and synthesize it, it comes to an estimate that it can shorten life. Loneliness can shorten life by 15 years, which is the equivalent of obesity, of smoking 15 cigarettes a day, of all kinds of other bad habits. So it actually does have some really serious physical effects on our bodies or on our loved one bodies. So it's something to pay attention. It's even more chronic for the elderly. So, you know, we want to pay attention to that and kind of see where it's going. So that's some kind of effects. So in our work, one of the other things we did, we collaborated with FAU, the nursing department, and we came across a PhD student there by the name of Jinga Oglesby Byrne. And she's working along with Dr. Subin Bolfin and Larry Chiang Onisco. That's the most challenging part of this presentation for me, is saying their names right here. So sorry if I killed any of those names. And this was part of PEARLS, and PEARLS is the program to encourage active, rewarding lives in seniors. And Jinga, for her PhD, wanted to do a study on loneliness and what we can do about it. So we partnered up with Jinga and chose a set of a study set of people. These were seniors in living environments where seniors being taken care of. And what we did was experimented with providing them support by telephone. Now, the initial idea was to give people support basically by just calling them and giving them companionship. And the name Call My Mom, which is the name of our company, came about because the founder and CEO, Rosie, had an experience with her mother that benefited greatly from receiving companionship as she was aging. And then she passed away, and Rosie had this idea. So the name Call My Mom came specifically from that, providing people companionship. It's not just mom. It's mom because that was Rosie's experience. It's mom, it's dad, it's grandma, it's people around us. Maybe it's uncle, maybe it's aunt, I don't know. Now maybe it's university students that we have kind of in isolation because they're really accustomed to being around their friends. I don't know. I've got a daughter at home that's going through loneliness symptoms, and she's perfectly healthy, 23-year-old, but she can't be with her friends. So, it's affecting a lot of people now. This particular study in PEARLS, we took this study group, and during first of all, the first step was we took them through the loneliness scale that you just did. And they all scored relatively high, both an emotional level and social level of loneliness. So we started providing them with 2 calls a week that did not just limit themselves to companionship. They weren't calls that were just, hey, how are you doing and what a beautiful day. They were calls that applied coaching. So our callers called these people, and they also gave them some companionship, but more importantly, what we did was encourage them to take social action. We encouraged them to call a couple of friends. We encouraged them to be the ones that reach out to their children or to their grandchildren. We encourage them to go for that daily walk and smile at least 5 people as you're walking. We encourage them to actually move a little bit more, to eat a little bit better, to just helping them look for a greater level of well-being. This went on for a period of 2 months. So 2 calls a week for 2 months. And then Jinga repeated the De Jong-Gierwald loneliness scale test. And the results after 2 months were quite amazing. The average was a 50% or greater reduction in depressive symptoms, achieved remission from depression, and showed statistical significance in lowering hospital readmission rates. So some real factual things there. The scores were on the tests, the difference before and after were at least 50% higher across the board, without exception, across this entire study group. Was some real effects of less hospital readmissions, less depression, so better feeling people. So we were quite pleased with that. And I think over the last few years, that's what we've discovered, is that, a little companionship is fine, and that's really helpful. And Emily, you talked about that, and when you said, hey, my working experience, actually, even though I scored a little bit higher on this loneliness scale than I would have, 3 weeks ago or a month ago, I have so much support from people around me, and that's coming through in this companionship sort of way, and it's really helpful. What we found is even more helpful in the service that we can provide is that coaching aspect of doing things that maybe a daughter or a son or a grandson or granddaughter may not do. you can be there and you can talk about what's going on, and maybe you even encourage them to, hey, you should go take a walk, or you should do that. But I'm not sure whether parents listen to their kids more or less than kids listen to their parents. We have a different kind of relationship. It's hard for me to convince a family member to do something. But if there's an outside person there, that trusted coaching relationship that's there and encouraging, getting agreement, getting commitment towards some social actions that actually make a difference, it's huge. And we honestly believe that if that can happen in 2 months, that big a difference in 2 months, what happens over 6 months? What happens over a year? Do we keep growing? Do we keep them moving? Do we keep them attentive to what's important to their own well-being? What I've learned through my almost 3 decades of coaching executives is that you have to stay there. You have to remain there. People just, we learn new ways of being, and then we get pulled off into other priorities or other thinking patterns, and we can kind of stop doing them. So what we find is it not only grows over time, but it also makes it sustainable. So that's what we've been working on. We are launched. We're helping more people now, and it's rewarding to us. It took a lot longer to actually kind of get this all up and all worked out. Sometimes you get ideas, and I'll go back to a phrase that I use a lot in my executive coaching, which is, it's so easy to overestimate what we're capable of getting done in the short term. And also very easy to underestimate what we're capable of in the long term. So we have to keep our focus right, not only with ourselves, but with others. And that's been very true with us. The work that we put in, which was supposed to be a year and actually turned into 3 years, has brought great benefits. Because I think if we started too soon, we would have limited ourselves maybe to companionship. And now we've learned that we can supercharge that. We can actually put that into multiples of growth by being there to coach people to do things between our 2 calls a week or 3 calls a week. That's what really makes a difference. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I am absolutely open to questions. Emily, I see your little hand coming up there, your electronic hand. So please tell us what's on your mind.
If you go to the chat, Kimberly has made a few comments. Maybe you can touch on them.
Let me see if I know how to do that. Chat. Chat, here we are. Here we are. Yes, I found it. Thank you, Emily. Okay. So from Kimberly says, I have seniors in my building that need to be outside for at least 15 minutes every day. They feel like prisoners and hate wearing the mask. I get it. I also had a man that loved to sit on the dock and watch the boats every day. He was not social, but needed the outside water view. He has an apartment with a garden view, and he just stopped eating because he had no routine or anything to look forward to. He passed away last Saturday. That's sad. That's sad. Yeah, so there are different things that affect people, and we have to find different solutions forward. These circumstances are exceptional, we hope, and we hope they come to a close soon. There are some sad stories out there in a lot of different forms. It's not easy wearing these masks and doing these things, so there are no clear answers, unfortunately, and that's the uncertainty that comes into the equation, which doesn't help. I mean, that can actually help augment this feeling of loneliness as well. So yeah, interesting that both comments, Kimberly, and thank you so very, very much for those, are related to just getting people outside. It's a huge, huge difference of just getting outside even for 15 minutes a day. And that's where we try to coach people. Yeah, thank you. Other thoughts or questions? Okay. I'm going to take that as nothing else to say. Oh, we got Emily raising the hand again. Go ahead. Jump in there.
Do you have anything to suggest about the negative news? Currently, a lot are stuck inside watching the TV, and the news can
Yes.
be disheartening. So how to cope with that, maybe?
Yes. I would remind you of the story of a man by the name of Norman Cousins. Anybody ever hear of Dr. Norman Cousins? This was a while ago. I'm showing my age here again, probably. Dr. Norman Cousins. This was probably from a few decades ago also. He was diagnosed with terminal cancer and given a very short period to live. And he was a medical doctor. And I can't remember how long the term was, but it was like 6 months or something that was considered irreversible back then. And he decided to treat himself with laughter. And what he did was watch just hilarious slapstick kind of movies, anything from the Three Stooges to I can see his face, all the comedians back then. And he watched these movies that just created belly laughs in him. Basically, he just laughed. He tried to laugh as much as possible through his illness, and he actually completely eradicated and eliminated the cancer in his body through laughter, and lived many years afterwards. He lived very happy and liked to eat, and he eventually died of obesity, but it wasn't cancer. So there's something there. Taking that, Emily, what we learn is, and what I think I can suggest maybe is coaching ourselves and those around us to look for moments of joy. And one thing that's I found really encouraging and stimulating through all of this, and right from the start, is people's ingenuity and humor of sending out some of these clips and creating some of these humorous situations about what's logically a crisis. And we get them all the time, you know. So look for releases that generate joy, that generate laughter. I think I follow this in all my life, and I've done it for many, many years. Maybe not 3 decades, but at least a decade. I do not immerse myself in the news. I mean, turning on the news and just watching the news is more dangerous than ever now. And it's not necessarily because it's fake news. It's because what the news does is it goes in really quickly now with technology, and it zooms in on sellable items, which there's nothing like that sells better than crisis and bad things that happen. You know, you're not going to attract a huge audience if all you're talking about are newborn kittens and something nice going on. There are some news channels that do that sort of thing, but not many. What sells is the big news and crisis. So they blow it up bigger than life, and it seems like it's right on top of us. And it's really, sometimes in a little isolated part. This is all kind of around us, and it is big. We need to be informed, but I think there's a danger in getting too immersed in just continually watching the news or listening to the news on it. A little daily update maybe on where things are, seeing something that might be going on there, but staying away from watching all the tragedy cases all over the place. And look for some humor. Find something to laugh about. Yeah. Deborah, I see your lips moving, but I have a hand going up for Ryan. You have to unmute yourself, Ryan. Just jump in there.
Okay, quick question. Thank you for everything you've spoken so far. It's been really helpful. Is it more important and effective to teach and coach seniors how to develop their own healthy perspective, like equipping them, or more important to be that presence to them to help them overcome loneliness? Or are they both equally as important? So it's
I think they're both important, so I'm not sure where to weight them. I think weighting them, which one is more important, would be more of an individual question. So there are many seniors that benefit greatly from being taught or coached how to equipping them. You expressed it very, very well. Equipping them to better take care of their own well-being. And then the coaching, the companionship, I think is necessary in honesty for all of us, just to sustain those good habits and to grow. you know, when we work out, if you go to the gymnasium with anybody here, and you do some certain exercises to increase the strength of some muscles, eventually the muscle will adapt to what you're asking it to do, and it will stop growing. So you have to change the exercise. You have to increase it or change or do something a little bit different. I think it's the same with well-being. I mean, if I take a very reduced example, if you've achieved to teach me that going for a 15-minute walk per day is going to make me feel better, it's going to help my well-being, even if I keep doing that, if that's like, if I don't change that somehow, if I don't change it up for a year, it's probably going to not stop. It's probably going to stop having that same perceived effect. So I may need to do something a little bit more with it. So having somebody there providing that companionship, maybe providing that teaching and coaching along the way, breaking it up for people a little bit more. I mean, today you have to smile at 5 people, and tomorrow, you know, maybe you do something else. So the answer is both, and the grade of how they balance each other, for me, would be an individual consideration for the person that we're taking a look at.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Debbie, you started to say something. I saw your lips moving, and you didn't take yourself off mute.
I saw Ryan's hand held, but you know, I think there's a lot of opportunity here, because I think call my mom is a great idea, but there's probably other ways too. Like there's probably some high school students that could get people started on calling to get volunteer hours, especially during this time when they can't get out. So they might be able to help in some of the assisted living facilities where people don't have the funds to do a program like Call Your Mom, because Call Your Mom is great and a lot of people can afford that, but maybe for the ones that are a little bit more desperate that can't afford it, it could be an opportunity for somebody with volunteer hours. I mean, they'd have to be vetted, of course, because not everyone would be capable, but something to throw in there.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I think there are those kinds of opportunities, and we're always open to explore those, even from Call My Mom. Our mission is to help people. We're in that vein, Debbie. One thing that we're doing is actually offering the first 30 days without any fee whatsoever to help people get through this particular crisis without having to make any sort of investment. And then support, if they do have the means, support is available in our programs as low as $15 a month. So it's 50 cents a day. It's not an economically prohibitive sort of thing. And we have prepared professional care friends that know how to coach people in the right direction. So the answer to your statement is yes and yes. There are many ways to approach it. We just want to help people. That's what it's all about. Okay, other thoughts? Anybody hungry? Maybe we can get some lunch and it can be afternoon. I don't know. Okay, from my side, that's a wrap. Thank you so much. I love seeing your faces. This is an interesting way to meet, and let's do it again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Have a great
our
day.
question is in the chat if anyone needs it.
Wonderful.
And we will have another talk on May 13th, maximizing mobility in elderly when isolated. So we'll send information out if anyone's interested. That will be done by our co-owner and physical therapist, Joe Martin.
Wonderful. I always look forward to Joe's presentation. Please don't miss that one. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah.